It's now time for an interesting discussion which I have been longing for this afternoon. We're going to hear about what strategical, technological, organizational, and individual capabilities are needed to really turn data into business value. And to kick this off, it's an honor to present our very own Peter Weiger, who's head of insights. He has a long background within research, a PhD in industrial economic and management, and is here to share our initial findings from Avow's Data to Value Barometer. Peter Weiger.
All right. Thank you. Good start. 3 questions. 1, have you invested in marketing technologies? Raise your hand. 2, did you feel that you got an optimal return on that investment? Raise your hand. Not as many. 3, what was the biggest challenge getting an optimal return on that investment? Would you say it was A, technological limitations? Raise your hand. Or B, culture factors? Raise your hand. Good. Or not good. But I have a solution. According to the research company Gartner then, investments in sales and automation are increasing. While, and this is a big while, people like you don't feel that you get an optimal return on that investment. So, sales automation, marketing automation is like a Ferrari, but it's stuck in the garage. Or as Jonas Kalén, CEO at Adlibris, puts it, you think it's a shiny new car, but it's easy to forget or to miss that you also should be able to drive it. A small detail if you have a Ferrari, right? The key word here is digital maturity. Digital maturity measures a company's ability to do the thing that Johanna talked about, turn customer data into business value. It's a key predictor when it comes to success in digital transformation. And research shows that organizations with high levels of digital maturity have competitive advantages over a number of areas. Not only then in direct top line and bottom line impact, for instance, total sales, but also, and this is important, in more indirect strategic impact, for instance, then improving skill sets. And if you're interested in some research that talks about the digital maturity perspective, these are 2 reports I can recommend. And this is why then we at Avaos created a Data to Value Barometer. It's an assessment of 7 different areas needed to do this thing, turning customer data into business value. And we're going to talk about both technological perspectives and non-technological perspectives then. And this barometer can then be used for instance, understanding the current state that you're in, and also setting a target state, but also tracking improvement. It's like a health check, basically. Going to the doctor once a year to see how good you are, how well you are, how fit you are. And last but not least, you can compare it with industry peers. And this is what it looks like then. 7 different areas. First one, customer-centric strategy. Second one, metrics and KPIs. Third one, data and analytics. Fourth one, technological capabilities. Fifth one, organizational capabilities. Sixth one, process, I'm only going to say. I'm going to call this, throughout this speech, process. Maybe process and ops, and then you can pronounce the second word yourself. So, area number 6, process. And last but not least then, area number 7, people and culture. And you maybe think that the biggest challenge when it came when it comes to doing a thing like this is creating the survey? No. Collecting the data? No. Analyzing the data? No. The biggest challenge for us has been to pronounce it. The people at the Swedish office say barometer, 3 vowels in a row. The Finnish people at office, barometer, with a P at the beginning, right? So, should we pronounce it all together? The British English pronunciation. And Johanna, you were correct. So it's called barometer. Everyone, barometer. Perfect. You get an Instagram hack from Oscar, and you get a pronunciation hack from me then. So, and Johanna also mentioned that I'm going to give you a sneak peek of the first findings from this study. We just opened it up for the existing customers. So this, what I'm talking about today, is based on then 70 respondents from 23 companies, representing 14 different industries and representing 10 different countries then. But I'm not going to do this by myself. Here to help me today, I have the Nordic region's largest, and I've written online bookstore, but it's the Nordic region's largest bookstore, basically, and the biggest online bookstore. So a warm welcome to Jonas Carlén, CEO at Adlibris.
Thank you.
Jonas is going to be my sports commentator, discussing the results. So, as mentioned before, the Nordic region's largest online bookstore, established in 1997. And this is impressive. 50 million visits per year, 15 million titles, 30,000 new titles per month, 15,000 purchases per day. And your goal is to increase then return on investments in data and technology. That's where we started this speech. And also create a world-class customer experience. Do you recognize your company?
Yeah, it looks like us, but also probably like a lot of other companies, I think, especially the two last parts here.
Yeah.
I think what stands out is that we have 15 million titles. Just reflect on that, how to keep track of them and to then inspire and give you the right titles. That's quite challenging, but also a great opportunity for us.
Yeah, and my reflection on this is that a lot of data, you cannot do it manually, you need to automate it with the help of data and AI. And another thing, we're going to probably get back to it. It's good to be an old company or a semi-old company, but it can be hard when you're about to change things. So, cool. Should we have a sneak peek then at the data? And I maybe will bore you now with unreadable graphs, but I'm just then playing the role of this researcher, so bear with me. Good things in these. So, in which areas do then respondents say their organizations are able to turn customer data into business value? Respondents say that their organizations are most able when it comes to data and analytics. That's the top one. And respondents say their organizations are least able when it comes to metrics and process. Bottom two then. I'm going to take a closer look at those two then. So, respondents say their organizations are most able in the area of data and analytics thanks to compliance, security, data, here meaning they're able to collect the right data, and analytics, they're able to analyze the data they collected. So comments on that, Jonas?
Well, I think I'm pretty happy to see that most of us have come a bit on the compliance part. I think that has been a necessity due to GDPR regulations and so forth. So that is not so surprising. Otherwise, I think a lot of us would be in deep trouble. Security kind of goes hand in hand. We see a lot of attacks, so you really need to beef up on the security part. And that also is a necessity in hygiene. Then I think when it comes to data and analytics, I do think that a lot of us share the perspective that we have created a data lake or maybe even a customer data platform. We have also probably been giving the organization tools to make their own reports and to see the data in different viewings. But what I think we, at least at Adlibris, are still and are now initiating is to move this data and analytics into the automation, into the processes, really to make it turn around and happen every time. And last but not least, I think this is the area where we see the highest grades. Probably this is because this is where you often start. You create the data lake, you start to do the tools, and then you beef up the organization, you do processes, you bring in competencies. And then I think that when the competencies are a bit higher, the demands on the data will be higher, thus they will decrease in satisfaction. So they will kind of be, a bit swing back and forth what is, in the forefront in the organizations.
Good comment. So, and on the other hand then, respondents say the organizations are least able in the area metrics and KPIs because of the following. They're not able to describe their target automation level. They don't monitor both direct and indirect impact, and they don't monitor lagging and leading indicators. Comment on that, Jonas.
Yeah, complex area, metrics and KPIs. And over my 25 years in business, they're always discussed. You're always trying to find the perfect KPI. You will never do that. And I think this kind of reflects in this one here. Also, I think that the metrics and KPIs will be steadily moving. If you're able to find 4 to 5 KPIs where you can measure the whole performance, and then you will let the leading or the supporting KPIs change over time. I think that is kind of the way to do it. But this is super complex, and I would advise not to, put an enormous amount of time into a theoretical exercise. Put them into practice and then let them work, and then you see if they, kind of are the ones you want to keep.
Good comment. Respondents also say the organizations are least able in the area process because of lacking documentation and lacking automation. Comment on that.
Yeah, process and ops, this is,
Yeah,
right? In the barometer. So I think one could not look at this one isolated. I think this is a lot about the organizational capabilities that belongs with the process and ops. And this is a super, I would say, complicated area. And also it is a tough area for companies to, you kind of often need to tear down the old organization. You need to, start from a blank page. That also means that some of the competencies, some of the people you have in the organization, they might not have a part in the new organization. So I think it's more complex than just documenting and automating things. This is a lot to do with the people you have in the organization. And this is a really, really tough exercise because it's also a very human exercise where you actually need to, redo things and also redo the competences.
Yeah. Are we coming back to that? So please comment on this then. Just joking. Just joking. This is basically the 7 areas, the 42 statements make them up, those 7 areas. And then we have, and this is where it gets interesting. We rated the different companies from what we call then leaders, the top 20, to laggards, the bottom 20, and to see the biggest differences between those 2 sets, so to speak. So to the left, you have the leaders. The highest score here in maturity index is 4.0, and then you have the leaders on this side then. Lowest score then 2.0. And what you can clearly see, Jonas, is that up in the right-hand corner is a lot of red. So this indicates that laggards are really struggling when it comes to strategy and metrics. And another thing here is that it's fairly green down in the left-hand corner, which says that leaders excel when it comes to people and culture. We're going to take a closer look at the data. So laggards say their organizations are less able in the areas customer-centric strategy because of lacking alignment and lacking execution. Any comments on that?
I think that the customer-centric strategy and then push it out in the organization, it has both to do with having the right tools, but also to have the right competencies in the organization. So I think this is kind of the ones that have come far in this one,
Yeah.
they probably have geared up, and are pretty far on all areas, because
Yeah.
otherwise it's difficult to be customer-centric.
Yeah. So, and laggards also say their organizations are less able in the area of metrics and KPIs. We talked about this. This is hard. They have lacking governance, and they have lacking then metrics for measuring this customer-centric strategy. Any comments on that?
It's not surprising. It
No.
goes hand in hand again. And I think, don't try to find the perfect KPI. Start somewhere, and
Yeah.
then you will learn.
I think the interesting thing is this one then. Leaders say their organizations are more able in the area of people and culture thanks to what we call target skill. It's not only that these companies know what they need here and now when it comes to competences, they also know what they need in the future. And they have a culture that's then collaborative, agile, and flexible, enabling the use of data and automation. And finally, they have both the skill and the will to transform. Any comments on that?
I think that those companies have probably put quite a lot of time and effort into really changing the organization. I do believe that a lot of them have also changed, a lot of people in the organization. And you need to challenge the way you have set up the organization historically. From being, pretty siloed, with often having maybe marketing in one silo, sales in one, CM in one, and then you add data and analytics in one silo. Having such an organization, I think you will not succeed in being both customer-centric and people and culture and data driven.
Yeah, good comment. Let's leave the 7 areas and look at the data even closer than from the 42 statements. And then we see at least 2 interesting things. One is that laggards say their organizations are less able in the area of technological capabilities because of they're not able to activate action or automate action in 3 or more channels. And they're far from able to personalize this content in 3 or more channels. Any comments on that?
Not more than that, it's very difficult to, without the right technological capabilities,
Yeah.
you will have difficulties to do this,
Yeah.
especially since all of us operate with a lot of data. And you can create some manual things around this, but you will never get scale.
No. The interesting thing here is then if you look at the chart, this is where the biggest difference is between the red one and the green one, so between the laggards and the leaders then. And it's then pinpointed at activation and personalization. One interesting thing happens in this chart. Laggards say their organizations are more able, and this is an ironic, so the laggards are more able than leaders in the area of technological capabilities, thanks to, speaking of irony then, digital maturity. So this is the only place in the chart where laggards say they outperform leaders, and it's in digital maturity. Any comment on that?
I think it goes hand in hand, because when you don't understand how you could use the data, then you will probably be pretty satisfied with the technological capabilities,
Yeah.
because the car will be good enough to drive.
Yeah.
So I think this, as you get more wise and you start working in other ways, this will switch, and that is also what we see in this barometer.
Yeah. My comment is that this is like Dunning-Kruger effect in full effect in the sense. And for you who are not familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect, is the cognitive bias that whereby people that have a low ability tend to overestimate their own ability, basically. So the less you know, the more confident you are. So sorry for that if you answer the survey. So last finding for the day. Respondents say their organization are struggling with organizational capabilities. So when we ask them about their biggest challenge, and back out of the survey and just ask at the end, they pinpoint organizational capabilities. But when we ask where they allocate most resources, the answer is data and analytics. Any comment on that?
Data and analytics is more tangible. Thus, it is easier to say that, okay, we are doing something to start moving in one direction. But this might not just be wrong, because one way to then more or less wake up organizationally might be that you start to create your data lake, you start to structure your data, and then you understand that, wow, we need to do stuff on the organizational part as well.
Yeah.
So they will kind of dance tango, and I think that it's natural to start on the right corner here.
Yeah. So more tangible in that sense, and this is more difficult. Yeah, going back to that. So to summarize then, we talked about that we're going to talk about the capabilities needed then to turn customer data into business value. And this is what we have learned today then, thanks to the barometer. More capabilities than just technological ones are needed to be successful in this. We have also learned that the biggest challenges are strategical, organizational, and individual, rather than technological then. And we have also learned that leaders excel at culture factors. They're really good at the hard stuff, but they excel when it comes to the soft stuff, those intangible things, basically. So, and the last recommendation then, please, please, please align your challenges with resources so you don't end up like these guys. Solving organizational problems with technological solutions. You have the first one here. Now that we've invested in this marketing tech stack, what's the ROI? Second one, that's a good question for new analytics tool we should buy. Third one, yes, and a new layer for data visualization. Funny because it's true. So if you're interested in reading more about how to get the Ferrari out of the garage, I recommend the blog post above. And if you're interested in reading more about Jonas and the Adlibris case, I recommend the blog post below. And finally, like I mentioned, we have done this barometer then for existing customers, and now we're opening it up for the public to answer it and to assess your maturity. So this is coming soon. So thank you for the day.